Hello and welcome to session 3. We're now going to look at duty 1. So we're going to run through this duty, start to look at some of the things that you could be doing within your place of work to make sure that you have some of the right tools to be able to plan, assess and monitor your learners. So let's go straight to the standards and we'll have a look. So here under month 2, duty 1, we're going to plan, collect and record activities. We're going to work within legal and ethical frameworks. Just a little disclaimer, I do have a classroom assistant in the background that you'll hear. It's my little lad. He's off nursery today because he's been unwell. So if you hear some banging and screaming in the background, I promise everything's okay. It's just my little lad. So let's start off with looking at the PowerPoint presentation and we'll work through this. So we're going to look at navigating legal and ethical frameworks first. So we need to understand those to be able to navigate them. So let's start. We're going to do an introduction to what is mentoring. We'll look at those legal and ethical frameworks. We'll plan mentoring activities. We'll conduct mentoring activities and we'll record those activities. We'll look at things around safeguarding, confidentiality, evaluation, challenges and solutions, benefits of mentoring, conclusions, some benefits of mentorees and mentors, setting smart objectives, looking at action plans and active listening, questioning, providing feedback, types of records, and reporting concerns and sharing information. So, just to start then, introduction. Welcome to this presentation, Meeting Legal and Ethical Frameworks within Learning and Skills Mentoring. Today, we'll explore the importance of planning, conducting and recording monitor activities to support mentorees in progression. As a professional, we understand the value of mentorship, but equally it's important to ensure mentoring practices align with legal and ethical frameworks. So again, if you think about legal and ethical frameworks, there's two kind of principles here that you need to consider. You need to consider your own sector. So if you're in the health and social care sector, you've got Skills for Care's ethical frameworks and codes of practice, or Skills for Health, their ethical frameworks and practice. And then you have the principles of the Society of Education and Training. So if we look at their codes of practice around teaching and learning, even though as a mentoree you're not technically going down that teacher route as such with this standard, you may want to align to those frameworks because it's quite a nice framework to align to. Mentorship is a powerful tool. It's obviously great for looking at personal and professional growth. And again, for organisations, it's a cost-effective way to ensure that your organisation is meeting the requirements set down by legislative frameworks. For example, I was in a care service not that long ago, and CQC have issued an enforcement notice around teaching and learning. And this enforcement notice was because a certain particular course hasn't been taught. Understanding legal frameworks is really important in this aspect because the reality is what the law says is that mandatory training must be taught. And for example, in health and social care, the care certificate. So we would do the care certificate. Thank you, Samuel. We would do the care certificate and then we would do on mandatory training. Nowhere in that legal framework does it then state you must go on to do this specialist training, because it is seen that the mandatory training and the Skills for Care training should umbrella the term, cover it. So for example, if there is an issue around helping people off the floor, yes, there is specific training for falls prevention and falls training. However, in assisted movement and handling, we do have to pick people up off the floor. In first aid, we do basic life support. So we do primary and secondary surveys. So we would do head-to-toe surveys and again, assisting people off the floor. So from your mandatory training, one could argue that the basic principles have been met. So you really do have to understand what your legal frameworks are within your sector. So we've got mandatory, we've got best practice, we've got maybe contract requirements, but legal requirements is normally covered through the mandatory principles. Yes, it may be best practice to have additional training, but that's exactly what it is. It's a guideline and best practice. And ultimately, of course, one should go down the line of best practice, but just be mindful that it's your responsibility to make sure that you are covering the minimum requirements and then looking at how you can support the wider skills there. Good. So what is mentoring? So mentoring is a professional relationship with an experienced person, the mentor. They're supported by someone less experienced, such as the mentoree. So, for example, I'm conducting my advanced clinical practice at the moment, and I will be entering it in on mentoring-mentoree relationship in early next year. So when I start my prescribing qualification, I will need to be mentored by a much more experienced person to ensure that my practice is fit for purpose, that I'm meeting those legal and ethical guidelines. It's their responsibility to ensure that I have the skills and knowledge that I need to feel confident within my role, and that I'll obviously work with them to progress towards the goal. Mentoring can take shape in many forms and informal relationships, so formal and informal. And I've done many mentoring relationships over a cup of coffee, and I have been mentored with many relationships over a cup of coffee or in a cafe, especially by my supervisors at university and things where they go, right, come with us, let's have a little chat. And actually, I find those informal conversations far more productive because I'm more at ease, I'm not feeling judged, and I feel like I can listen and hear. So the benefits of mentoring are numerous. They apply to both the mentor and the mentoree. The mentors and mentorees can provide clear development opportunities, increase confidence, and obviously look at those skills for improving. And it works on both sides because as a mentor, we have to maintain a certain amount of hours. And then as a mentoree, similar thing. So I've touched on the legal and ethical framework. So when considering mentoring activities, it is important that you understand your legal requirements, but then there's the ethical requirements too. And the ethical requirements look a lot more around the code of conduct. So if we understand our 7 principles of ethics, we've got our 3 theories around ethics, the virtuous theory, etc. It's important for us to be able to apply that to our role. So if we think about the ethics behind this, we're thinking things such as confidentiality, safeguarding, being on the right to know, and how to manage some of those principles. And again, within our code of practice, they do list those ethical frameworks. So planning, monitoring activities. So effective monitoring requires careful planning. And again, most monitoring activities, you'll have a plan of some type. So it'll be a document with a grid on it, up or down the page. Jeremy said the SMART targets. So time, being specific what the activity is, how long it's going to take, what the outcome is, and who's responsible for it. No SMART targets, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or realistic, and time-bound. So when we conduct the activity of monitoring, the activities require a range of skills and knowledge, including active listening. So again, if you're new to kind of those question techniques and those signs of communication, if you log into the functional skills and you look at the speaking and listening section, we've done many sessions on how to actively listen and how to ask open questions, expanded questions, filter questions, and closed questions, etc. But effective questioning helps the mentor and the mentoree achieve their goals in a much quicker way. Equally, providing feedback is essential. So again, in the speak and listen, we have covered how to give feedback. And if you are doing your teacher training, we do cover how to give feedback against criteria. But ultimately, when we give feedback in our mentor-mentoree position, we're doing that praise sandwich. So we're going to find something good, we're going to go for areas of development, and then we're going to end on a positive as well, because it's all about building rapport and building trust and doing those regular check-ins to making sure that people are achieving their goals. We need to record the mentoring activity. So as we always say, if it's not recorded, it doesn't exist. And that may be things such as supervisions, that could be CPD logs, that could be reflective practice, or indeed you may just have a separate reflective meeting activity log where you just record the time you met up, how long you met up for, and what it is you discussed or did. Again, maintaining confidentiality throughout those activities allows you to build trust, and looks at mentors should be aware of those legal and ethical issues around that. So when we think about our roles and responsibilities, there is a possibility that we're going to come across safeguarding concerns. So those safeguarding concerns can happen in multiple ways. So it may be that we're worried about the people in which our mentoree is looking after. We may have a concern about our mentoree's health and well-being, or alternatively, it's our safeguarding. Are we putting ourselves in a vulnerable situation? So this is definitely a 360 approach. So you must ensure that you understand the principles of safeguarding. There's lots of free courses that you can do online through the Education and Training Federation, or through the Society of Education Training around principles of safeguarding learners, yourself, and mentorees. But ultimately, it's about keeping everybody safe from allegations and abuse. So if we think about those typical abuses around signs of neglect, duty of care, willful neglect, deliberately doing something, and those principles around maintaining violence, aggression, financial abuse, etc. So lots of things there to consider around safeguarding. Equally around confidentiality, you need to understand about those boundaries of disclosure, what you can hold and keep confidential, as well as those things that you consent to. Now, in a lot of organisations, there will be a clause in employee handbooks that state any information gathered through the organisation remains the property of the organisation. And that's true to a point. So therefore, you will need to make sure that you regularly have conversations with your HR department so you're aware of your boundaries around confidentiality, so what can and cannot be said. Furthermore, we should be on that self-reflection journey, so we should all be always evaluating ourselves. It's a crucial component, allowing mentorees and mentors to assess progress, determine those goals, look at that constant reflective cycle and that quality improvement cycle. So looking at what works, what doesn't work, and measuring that at every stage. I highly recommend you just make a simple evaluation form on something like SurveyMonkey or Jotforms. That way you're able to track it over a period of time. It's electronic, you're not having to do paperwork. And those surveys collate the data, and then you're able to analyse that a lot more quicker. You're also going to be responsible for your continual quality improvement. So by carrying out these regular evaluations, you can use that data for your quality improvement plan and your self-assessment report. So part of work-based learning, part of being a mentor, is about coming up against common challenges. And those common challenges could be through communication, miscommunication, generally, you know, oh, you didn't say that, you didn't say that, you didn't say this, you didn't say that. So when we think about the Shannon and Weaver approach to the sender and the receiver of information, we need to make sure that we're clear and concise in what we're saying and what we're expecting to avoid those misunderstandings. So it's always useful to get the mentoree to repeat back everything that you've told them. Excuse me, and especially when summarising information. So at the end of a session, and I bring a session to a close, I'll always say to somebody, look, thanks very much for today. So what we've done today is this, what we're doing next is that, and what I want you to do is this. So what's your understanding of that? Do you feel confident? And try to get them to buy into this good communication skills about kind of that repeating. And again, understanding clear lines of communication. So to avoid communication problems, go back to our functional skills, speaking and listening parts. We've done lots of work there. There's lots of videos on how to avoid misunderstandings. But equally, there's other challenges. So there's work-based challenges, there's time commitment challenges, there's motivation challenges. So they're all the things that you're going to need to then be able to sit down with your mentoree and problem solve. Ultimately, the one around time management, there's lots of things that you can do online. There's lots of free courses around time management. And time management is a skill set in its own right. You know, let's not underestimate that. What it says to me is two things. One, that this person hasn't put this as a priority on their agenda, because things that are a priority, we always find time for. Things that aren't a priority to that person, we don't find time for. So that says a lot to me about their commitment. Second of all, I tend to say to people, look, you have the same time as everybody else in this world, and everybody else in this world has similar problems or similar life journeys, work commitment, family, etc. It's down to how we problem solve and manage those situations. So it's really important that we recognize that as we go through those processes.